So it is official, Nikola Jokic is the 2022 NBA's MVP, winning his second straight. He was very deserving and a great choice by the voters. But with that being said, a lot of NBA media members are having a fit that Jokic just went back to back. And for the final time this year, I'm going to debunk the worst MVP takes and the worst arguments against Nikola winning it. And first up, we have Joy Taylor from Fox Sports, who argues Embiid was the rightful winner.
I always had Embiid as my MVP, and the issue with the league MVP for the NBA is the same every single year. It is truly a regular season award.
That's not an issue with the MVP, that's an issue with you. As for 75 years, the MVP clearly has always been a regular season award. And mentally, you have to cut off that award once the playoffs start. It's really not that hard to do.
But we can't put him in that other category until he has the postseason success to match with it. And him getting back-to-back MVPs when you see what happens in the postseason against the best competition, who, by the way, are also dealing with injuries, are also dealing with players missing, you truly see who is on the next level and who is the MVP.
Now, once again, Joy Taylor, on purpose or on accident, brings up the playoffs to justify her MVP pick. And one thing she said pretty clearly is that Jokic doesn't have the playoff success to be in the elite tier of NBA superstars. Now, for 1 second, take a step back and think about Joel Embiid. Does he have any all-time great playoff run or any run making the conference finals? That's a big fat no. Jokic back in 2020, to his credit, made the Western Conference Finals versus the Lakers. That run on its own was more success than Embiid has ever had in the playoffs. And by far the worst part in that clip is where Joy Taylor brought up injuries and teams being hurt. Oh, every team has injuries, they're all banged up come playoff time. Nikola Jokic for the entire season missed his two best players, that being Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. What other team in the NBA or MVP candidate can say that for the entire season?
Give it as soon as the NBA regular season is over, before we start getting tainted by what happens in the postseason. They always wait. Now we know it's Jokic. Where's Jokic? Did we watch Jokic this weekend? We did not. Yes, it's a regular season award. But here we are watching Giannis be the best player in the world and Joel Embiid come back and have the impact that he's had on this series. He would have swept the Sixers without Joel Embiid on the floor, without question, even with Harden's performance last night.
Again, for the final time, the MVP is a regular season award. Mentally, it's not very hard to separate those two into different categories. And I think Joy Taylor's big problem is looking at the best player versus the NBA's MVP, as those two things very rarely are the same guy. And in regards to Joel Embiid in this year's playoffs, to his credit, he's been very, very good. But looking at both his playoff series compared to Jokic, he averaged less points, less rebounds, as well as assists, on lower shooting percentage, lower three percentage, and lower free throw percentage. Jokic still individually was better than Embiid in this year's playoffs, and I would argue Golden State was better than any team Embiid has faced.
When you're talking about back-to-back MVPs, you're in a rare air of greatness. It should be special. It should be sacred when you're talking about back-to-back MVPs. And you'll notice the name on here that everyone always brings up when you talk about back-to-back MVPs. Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Tim Duncan, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, and of course, Steve Nash. Now, Steve Nash has been argued that he shouldn't have been back-to-back MVP forever. And I'm not saying that Jokic is going to end his career in that space, but it does kind of feel like, all right, it's great during the regular season.
So a little less than a month ago, I called it, saying the NBA media will compare Steve Nash to Jokic, when their MVPs aren't even remotely comparable. As Jokic, when he won it, was averaging 27, 14, and 8 on all-time great efficiency. Comparing the Joker to Steve Nash It's highly disingenuous, but I expect nothing less from the NBA media and someone like Joy Taylor. And staying at Fox Sports, next up, we have Antoine Walker, who once again doesn't think Jokic should have won the MVP.
I think Embiid could have got it last year, and he was deserving of it this year. And I think he did the necessary things to get the award. When I think about what he had to deal with the Ben Simmons and the trade and all that stuff, but he stayed consistent throughout the whole season, and he played. The one question mark on Embiid was his health and can he get through a full season. I thought he did a terrific job of playing throughout the whole season and giving his team the best seed they can have and giving them now the best opportunity to win come playoff time.
So, of course, in talking about Joel Embiid, he had a great individual season. But one thing you have to do in these debates when comparing MVP seasons is be consistent and apply the exact same logic. And Antoine's two big points were Embiid playing 68 games and him being consistent for the entire season. Now, once again, applying the same logic, look at Jokic, who was better than Embiid in both those categories, playing 6 more games and from month to month being better and more consistent. Look at Jokic and his month-by-month stats. November, 28-13-7, December, 25-14-8, January, 27-13-9, February, 23-14-9, March, 30-13-8, and April, 38-18-6. Those numbers by Jokic are simply insane and scream consistency. And looking at the last 2 months of the season, Jokic went out on a major high note, averaging 32, 14, and 8 on above 60% shooting.
So I think Embiid should have been, if it wasn't going to be Giannis, it should have been Embiid. I think we're losing the point, and I think by picking a joker, you just open up a can of worms that you don't necessarily have to have a winning season. If you're a 6th seed and you're able still to win the MVP, we're not rewarding guys that have put the work in, that have catapulted their team to being very good and moving up in the playoffs and moving up in the standings.
And there it is. The worst case I've heard against Jokic not being the MVP, dealing with win totals and win percentage. Once again, take a step back and realize Jokic this year, without his 2 best players in the West, won 47 games. That was only 4 less than Giannis and Embiid, who both won 51. And saying Denver was the 6th seed compared to Giannis and Embiid is highly disingenuous when their overall records are separated by only 4 games. And if you want to speak of NBA precedent, look at past MVP winners who've had 50 or less wins. In 1988, you had Michael Jordan who won 50, 01 you had Iverson, also 50, you had Bill Russell, Bob Pettit, and Bob McAdoo at 49, Bill Walton at 48, Wilt Malone at 47, and Westbrook Malone at 46. And the lowest of all comes from Kareem, who only won 40 games during his MVP season. There is 1000% NBA precedent for a player to win the award with 47 to 50 wins. And looking past Antoine Walker, but staying at Fox Sports, next up we have Emmanuel Acho, as well as Rick Bucher, with their terrible Nikola Jokic takes.
He deserved to win the MVP if you're just looking at this season by himself, no other players looking at what they did. But when I get to looking at what Joel Embiid did,
I'm listening.
Sixers, 51 wins. When I get to looking at what Giannis Antetokounmpo did, Bucks, 51 wins. When I really get to looking at some of the other guys who were in contention for MVP, that's when I'm like, no, y'all got it wrong.
The overall theme of this video and the word of the day should be disingenuous. As in that clip, Acho brought up Giannis as well as Embiid and their teams winning 51 games. What he didn't do was bring up Jokic winning 47, only 4 less. If a measly 4-game difference decides the MVP for you, I'm sorry, but you're simply wrong. It's not like Giannis and Embiid, their teams, won 64, 65 games. They only won 51. Historically speaking, any of these guys winning the award would have been on the lower end of win totals for an MVP winner.
The Joker may have deserved to win the MVP, but he still should have won the MVP because if the biggest reason the Joker won MVP was because not necessarily of what he did, but because of what his teammates did not do, then I can't say he should have won it.
Okay, fair enough, let's play this game. Jokic this year averaged 27, 14, and 8 on insane shooting splits. For his Denver team, he led them in points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, as well as field percentage. And in a very tough Western Conference, minus his two co-stars won 47 games, only 4 less than the other 2 MVP candidates, with their teams being relatively healthy. And compared to the entire NBA, Jokic was top 10 in points, top 10 rebounds, and top 10 in assists, something Giannis and Embiid cannot say they were this season. And for NBA history, no player but Jokic can say they scored 2,000 points, 1,000 boards, and 500 assists in a single season.
Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or Joel Embiid. Embiid happened to be at the top of my ballot because of intangibles, because of elements beyond simply the numbers. And I agree with you, Acho, that, yeah, look, there's a leading scorer on the worst team in the league. Guys are going to score 25. Correct. And you go, oh, man, that guy's really good. Well, no, dude, you're going to have the ball enough. You're going to get numbers. That's just the way the game works.
Rick Bucher, Nikola Jokic's team was not the worst in the NBA. They won 47 games, only 4 less than Giannis and Embiid. Stop being so disingenuous and not pointing out the obvious facts just to fit your narrative. And the one thing that really grinds my gears is people like Rick throwing out these vague terms. It was beyond the stats. It was something else, not of this world, of why Embiid was the MVP. This is basketball, and stats quantify how good a player was in this given season. As an MVP voter, you need to have definitive criteria, whatever that may be, but it needs to be tangible and something you can look at and point to as your criteria.
But Embiid had to come through. It's the same reason that I voted Giannis Antetokounmpo as my MVP last year. It wasn't the numbers, it was how he got them. I saw a guy that, from an emotional standpoint, was leading his team.
Okay, stop it. Cut off Rick right there. Clearly, he's more of an emotional voter who votes off narrative rather than stats or anything tangible. Once again, a big-time problem with the voters as well as the MVP in general. Now, with that final point being made, that is the end of the video. And for the last time this year, we once again expose the worst MVP takes against Nikola Jokic. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.